In the quiet corners of basketball history, some names have faded. Champions who never sought the spotlight. Defenders who changed games without headlines. Tonight, we remember them. There was a time when defense had no trophy, no award, no official recognition beyond the whispers of those who truly understood the game. And in that era, before the league celebrated its greatest stoppers, one man was perfecting an art that would soon be honored. Sidney Moncrief was born on September 21, 1957, in Little Rock, Arkansas. He grew up in a segregated South where basketball courts offered more than just recreation, they offered possibility. By the time he reached high school, his frame had stretched to 6'4" and his hands had learned to anticipate movement before it happened. At the University of Arkansas, Moncrief became part of something special. They called them the Triplets: Sidney, Ron Brewer, and Marvin Delph, three players who moved together like jazz musicians finding a rhythm. In 1978, they carried Arkansas to the Final Four, where the nation watched this kid from Little Rock defend some of the best guards in college basketball. He averaged 16.9 points per game that season, but it was his defense that made coaches take notice. The way he shadowed ball handlers, the way he forced them into uncomfortable spaces. The Milwaukee Bucks selected him 5th overall in the 1979 NBA draft. That same draft brought Magic Johnson and Larry Bird into the league, two names that would define an era. Moncrief arrived without fanfare, without the media attention, without the prophecies of greatness. He was simply a defensive-minded guard from Arkansas, about to enter a league that didn't yet know how to properly measure what he did best. His rookie season was solid, but unspectacular. 9.9 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, 2.5 assists. The Bucks won 49 games and reached the second round of the playoffs. Moncrief guarded the opposition's best perimeter player every night, but there were no statistics to capture the shots he prevented, the passes he disrupted, the confidence he drained from opposing offenses. But he was learning, studying, growing. By his second season, something began to shift. Coach Don Nelson gave him more responsibility, more minutes, more freedom to impose his will on the defensive end. Moncrief responded. His scoring jumped to 14.8 points per game. His rebounds increased. His assists increased. But more importantly, the Bucks' defense became suffocating when he was on the floor. In the 1981 through 82 season, Moncrief averaged 19.8 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 4.3 assists per game. He made his first All-Star team. He made the All-Defensive First Team. The Bucks won 55 games. Eastern Conference teams began to fear matchups with Milwaukee, not just because of their offensive firepower, but because Moncrief made their best players uncomfortable.
Still, the national conversation centered on others. Magic and Bird were engaging in their legendary rivalry. The Lakers and Celtics were building dynasties. The Bucks were consistently excellent, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference throughout the early 1980s, but they couldn't break through to the finals. And Moncrief, despite his brilliance, played in relative shadow. Then came the 1982 through 83 season. The NBA recognizing that defense deserved its own spotlight, introduced a new award, the Defensive Player of the Year. For the first time in league history, there would be an official recognition of the game's greatest defender. Moncrief put together a season that demanded attention. He averaged 22.5 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. He shot 52.4% from the field. But those numbers, impressive as they were, told only half the story. The other half lived in the possessions where he erased opposing guards, the games where he held all-stars to career-low shooting percentages, the fourth quarters where his defense sealed victories. When the votes were counted, Sidney Moncrief became the NBA's first ever Defensive Player of the Year, the inaugural winner, the first name ever etched onto that trophy. It was a quiet coronation for a player who had been quietly dominating for years. He wasn't finished.
The following season, 1983 through 84, Moncrief did something that wouldn't be duplicated by another guard for years. He won the Defensive Player of the Year award again. Back-to-back recognition. The first player to ever accomplish this feat. He averaged 21.7 points that season and made his second straight all-defensive first team. The message was clear. Sidney Moncrief wasn't just the best defender in basketball. He was defining what elite defense looked like. Those who played against him understood. Michael Jordan, years later, would speak about Moncrief with reverence. He described Moncrief's intensity, his intelligence, his ability to make you feel his presence for 48 minutes. Larry Bird faced him in playoff battles and knew that every basket would be earned against Milwaukee's number 4. These weren't casual compliments from competitors. They were acknowledgments from legends. Moncrief's physical tools were remarkable. He possessed a 36-inch vertical leap. He could bench press his body weight plus 30 pounds. At 6'4", he played bigger than his height suggested, using leverage and positioning to defend forwards when matchups required it. His hands, quick and strong, poked balls loose before offensive players realized they were vulnerable.
But what made Moncrief truly special was his mind. He studied film obsessively. He learned opponents' tendencies. He knew their favorite moves, their preferred spots on the floor, their habits when tired. He turned defense into a chess match, staying 2 moves ahead. From 1982 through 1986, Moncrief made 5 consecutive All-Star teams, 5 straight all-defensive first-team selections. He averaged over 20 points per game for 3 straight seasons. The Bucks won at least 50 games in 4 of those 5 seasons. They were consistently one of the best teams in basketball, reaching the Eastern Conference Finals twice. Yet the ultimate prize eluded them. In 1983, they lost to the Philadelphia 76ers, who swept through the playoffs with Moses Malone and Julius Erving. In 1984, they fell to the New Jersey Nets in a first-round upset. The path through the Eastern Conference meant facing either the Celtics or Sixers, dynasties at their peak. Milwaukee's window never quite opened wide enough. And then, cruelly, Moncrief's body began to betray him. A degenerative knee condition, a wearing away of cartilage that no amount of training or determination could overcome. By the mid-80s, the pain became constant,
The explosiveness that had defined his game began to diminish. He could still play, still contribute, but the decline was visible. The knees that had carried him to such heights were breaking down.
In 1987 through 88, his scoring dropped to 14.6 points per game. The following season, 12.7. He tried to adapt, to rely more on his basketball IQ and less on his athleticism, but the knees wouldn't cooperate. In 1989, at age 31, still battling through pain, the Bucks waived him. He signed with the Atlanta Hawks, playing 16 games before retiring. His career ended with quiet grace. No farewell tour, no media celebration. Just a player whose body had given all it could give, walking away from the game he had defended so brilliantly. The numbers tell one story: 15.6 points, 4.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists per game across 11 seasons, 5 All-Star selections, 4 All-NBA teams, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, a career offensive rating of 119.7 that still stands as the best in Bucks franchise history. But numbers alone don't capture what Moncrief meant. He represented excellence without ego, dominance without drama. He was the first, the inaugural winner of an award that would eventually honor Kevin Garnett, Kawhi Leonard, and Rudy Gobert. He set the standard. For decades after his retirement, Moncrief's name faded from mainstream basketball conversations. Younger fans knew Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird. They didn't know about the guard from Arkansas who had made those legends work for everything they got. The Bucks retired his number 10 jersey in 1990, honoring him quietly in Milwaukee, but national recognition remained elusive. Then, on September 6, 2019, Sidney Moncrief received a phone call. The Basketball Hall of Fame wanted him. 30 years after his retirement, the sport's highest honor finally arrived. He was 71 years old when he gave his induction speech, his voice steady, his gratitude genuine. In that speech, he didn't boast about his accomplishments. He thanked his teammates, his coaches, his family. He spoke about the privilege of playing basketball, about the joy of competition. He was, even in his moment of recognition, exactly who he had always been, a humble champion who let his work speak. Today, when defensive specialists emerge in the NBA, players who take pride in stopping the opposition's best scorer, they walk a path Sidney Moncrief carved. When the Defensive Player of the Year trophy is awarded each season, his name is part of its origin story. He was the first, the inaugural defender, a player who proved that greatness doesn't always need spotlights. And on quiet nights, when the historians and the true students of basketball discuss the greatest two-way guards who ever played, his name surfaces. Not as loud as some, not as celebrated as others, but there, always there in the conversation where it belongs. Sidney Moncrief never reached the NBA Finals, never won a championship ring, never became a household name, but he won something else, the respect of everyone who truly understood what he was doing. And in the end, for a player who valued substance over style, perhaps that was the perfect legacy.
The man who defended without mercy, who gave everything until his knees had nothing left to give, who became the first to win an award that now defines defensive excellence. He rests now in history's quieter corners, content that those who know, know. Some basketball players seem destined for greatness from childhood. They dominate youth leagues. They're recruited by every major college. They enter the NBA with expectations already written. Mark Eaton was not one of those players. Mark Eaton was born on January 24, 1957, in Inglewood, California, to parents whose height hinted at his future. His father stood 6 feet 9 inches. His mother measured 6 feet tall. By the time Mark finished high school, he had reached 6 feet 11 inches, but he weighed only 175 pounds. He was tall, yes, but gangly, uncoordinated, uncertain what to do with his frame. Basketball didn't come naturally to him. He was more interested in water polo, where his height provided an obvious advantage. When he graduated from high school, no major college programs came calling. No recruiters showed up with scholarship offers. He was just an extremely tall young man without a clear path forward. So he worked. He became an auto mechanic, fixing cars, earning money, living an ordinary life. Basketball seemed like something from his past, not his future. But fate has a way of finding 7-footers.
An assistant coach at Cypress College in California noticed Eaton working at a gas station. He saw the height, saw the potential, and convinced Mark to give basketball another chance. Eaton enrolled at Cypress, a junior college, and began learning the game properly for the first time. His improvement was gradual but noticeable. He transferred to UCLA, joining one of college basketball's most prestigious programs. At UCLA, Eaton mostly sat on the bench. He played sparingly behind other big men, averaging just over a point per game in his 2 seasons. When the 1982 NBA draft arrived, he wasn't expected to be selected in the early rounds. The Utah Jazz took him in the 4th round, 72nd overall. 4th-round picks rarely make NBA rosters. They're usually training camp bodies, temporary solutions, quickly forgotten. Mark Eaton was 25 years old, an auto mechanic who had played junior college basketball and barely seen the court at UCLA. The Jazz were coming off a 30-win, 52-loss season, finishing last in the Midwest Division. Nobody expected much from either the team or their 4th-round pick. Eaton's first NBA game was unremarkable, but his second game changed everything. He blocked 7 shots. 7 times he swatted away opponents' attempts, his massive wingspan creating a no-fly zone around the basket. Coach Frank Layden watched this enormous human protect the rim and realized he might have found something special.
Still, the Jazz were terrible that first season. They won 25 games. They lost 57. They were rebuilding, searching for identity. But Eaton gave them something, a defensive anchor, a presence in the paint that couldn't be ignored. He averaged 4.5 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 3.4 blocks per game. Nothing about his offense suggested stardom, but his defense suggested possibility. The following season, 1983 through 84, Eaton's minutes increased. His confidence grew. He blocked
351 shots, leading the entire NBA. At 7 feet 4 inches tall, with an 8-foot wingspan, he didn't need to jump high to alter shots. He simply needed to be there, arms extended, occupying space. Opponents began changing their layups in mid-air when they saw him coming. Some simply avoided the paint altogether. Then came the 1984 through 85 season, when Mark Eaton did something that had never been done before and has never been done since. He blocked 5.56 shots per game. In 82 games, he swatted away 456 attempts. 456 times he erased scoring opportunities. 456 times he sent messages to opposing offenses that the paint belonged to Utah. No player in NBA history has blocked 400 shots in a single season. Not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, not Hakeem Olajuwon, not Dikembe Mutombo, not anyone. Mark Eaton, the former auto mechanic, set a record that has stood for nearly 4 decades and may stand forever.
The NBA noticed. They named him Defensive Player of the Year. The quiet giant from California, who had worked on car engines just a few years earlier, was now the league's premier defender. He averaged 9.7 points and 9.0 rebounds that season, but those numbers were secondary. His value lived in what he prevented, not what he produced offensively. Utah's transformation was remarkable. In 1983 through 84, they improved to 45 wins. The next year, they won 41. By 1985 through 86, they posted 42 wins and made the playoffs. The Jazz had found their foundation, and his name was Mark Eaton. He was immovable, sturdy, dependable. From 1983 through 1985, he played in 670 consecutive games. Night after night, regardless of opponent or circumstance, he was there, protecting the rim, altering shots, making centers think twice before driving the lane. His presence allowed the Jazz to take risks defensively. Guards could pressure ball handlers more aggressively, knowing that if someone got past them, Eaton waited at the rim. The entire defensive scheme revolved around funneling opponents toward number 53, toward those impossibly long arms, toward the rejection that awaited them. In 1987 through 88, Eaton won Defensive Player of the Year again. He had refined his game even further, averaging 4.6 blocks per game and 9.5 rebounds. He made the all-defensive first team for the 3rd time in 4 years. The Jazz won 47 games, continuing their ascent. The 1988 through 89 season marked a pinnacle. Eaton averaged 10.3 rebounds and 3.8 blocks. For the first time in his career, he was selected to the NBA All-Star Game. He joined teammates Karl Malone and John Stockton in the Western Conference lineup, the first time in franchise history that Utah sent 3 players to the All-Star Game. It was recognition
that the Jazz had become relevant, competitive, dangerous. On November 17, 1987, against the San Antonio Spurs, Eaton grabbed 25 rebounds. 25 times he secured possession for his team. It was the highest rebounding total of his career, a testament to his positioning, his timing, his understanding of where missed shots would land. Offensively, Eaton was limited. He never averaged more than 9.7 points per game in any season. He wasn't asked to score. He had dunks, powerful, emphatic slams on lobs and offensive rebounds, but he had no post moves, no jump shot, no offensive creativity. That was fine. That wasn't his role. His role was to protect, to defend, to block. And he did it better than almost anyone who ever played.
Eaton's career averages tell a simple story. 6.0 points, 7.9 rebounds, 3.5 blocks per game. The 3.5 blocks per game remains the highest career average in NBA history. No one has been more consistently dominant at denying shots. He finished his career with 3,064 blocks, which ranked second all-time behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he retired. What made Eaton special wasn't just his size. Plenty of 7-footers have entered the NBA. It was his temperament. He was calm, patient, never angry, never frustrated. Opponents would score on him, and his expression wouldn't change. Refs would miss goaltending calls, and he wouldn't complain. He simply went back down the court and prepared to defend again. Teammates described him as gentle, soft-spoken, thoughtful. He wasn't loud in the locker room. He didn't demand touches or plays drawn up for him. He did his job quietly and thoroughly, and let the results speak. The Jazz became perennial playoff contenders during Eaton's tenure. From 1984 through 1993, Utah made the playoffs 10 consecutive times. They never won a championship. The Western Conference in that era meant navigating through the Lakers, the Rockets, the Spurs, and eventually the Bulls. But they were consistently excellent, and Eaton's defense was a massive reason why. When he retired in 1994, the Jazz honored him by raising his number 53 jersey to the rafters of the Delta Center. He became the first Jazz player to have his number retired. Karl Malone and John Stockton would eventually join him, but Mark was first, the foundation on which Utah's success was built. After basketball, Eaton returned to a quiet life. He became a restaurateur, opening a restaurant in Utah. He rode motorcycles. He stayed connected to the Jazz organization, occasionally appearing at games, always gracious with fans who recognized him. On May 28, 2021, Mark Eaton died in a bicycle accident near Park City, Utah. He was 64 years old. The news shocked the basketball community. This gentle giant, who had protected the rim so fiercely for so many years, was gone. Tributes poured in from former teammates, opponents, and fans. Rudy Gobert, who would go on to win 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards with Utah, spoke about how Eaton's legacy inspired him. The modern rim protector, acknowledging the original. The current shot blocker, honoring the man who set the standard.
Mark Eaton's story is one of patience and persistence. He wasn't discovered until his 20s. He wasn't expected to succeed. He had no offensive game, no flashy skills, no highlight reel moves that would dominate ESPN. What he had was height, wingspan, intelligence, and an understanding that defense wins games. He changed the trajectory of a franchise. Before Eaton, the Jazz were irrelevant, losing consistently, without identity. After Eaton, they became one of the most consistently successful teams in basketball for 2 decades. That transformation didn't happen by accident. It happened because a 7'4" former auto mechanic decided to stand in the paint and make opponents earn everything.
His records still stand. 5.56 blocks per game in a single season. 3.5 blocks per game for a career. 456 blocks in one season. Numbers that seem impossible. Numbers that may never be matched. When historians discuss the greatest defensive players in NBA history, Mark Eaton's name belongs in the conversation. Not because he sought recognition, not because he demanded attention, but because what he did, night after night, season after season, was remarkable. He was the 7'4" giant who moved gently through the world, but dominated fiercely on the court. The 4th-round pick who became a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. The mechanic who became a monument. And his legacy lives in every shot blocker who understands that defense is art, that protection is purpose, that greatness doesn't always come with a scoring title. Mark Eaton never asked for the spotlight. He just stood in the paint and did his job. And sometimes that's enough to be unforgettable. In the early 1970s, professional basketball was divided. The NBA had history and tradition. The American Basketball Association, the ABA, had creativity and flash. Red, white, and blue basketballs, the three-point line, high-flying dunks, and wide-open games. And while the NBA had established stars, the ABA was building its own legends. One of them stood 7 feet 2 inches tall and moved with a power that earned him a singular nickname. They called him the A-Train, and once Artis Gilmore got moving, nothing could stop him. Artis Gilmore was born on September 21, 1949, in Chipley, Florida, a small town in the Panhandle. He was one of 10 children, growing up in circumstances that offered little certainty. What he had was size. By his teenage years, he had reached 7 feet, and basketball became his way forward. He played at Gardner-Webb Junior College before transferring to Jacksonville University, a small school in Florida that had never been a basketball powerhouse. But with Gilmore anchoring the middle, Jacksonville became impossible to ignore. In the 1969 through 70 season, Gilmore averaged 24.3 points and 22.7 rebounds per game. 22.7 rebounds. That mark still stands as the NCAA Division I record. Game after game, he dominated the glass.
his massive hands snatching rebounds away from opponents who couldn't compete with his size and strength. Jacksonville made an improbable run to the NCAA championship game, eventually losing to UCLA and a team featuring Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe. But Gilmore's performance announced his arrival. He was the best rebounder in college basketball and one of the most efficient scorers. When he declared for professional basketball, both leagues wanted him.
The Chicago Bulls selected him in the 7th round of the 1971 NBA Draft, 117th overall, a shockingly late pick that reflected the uncertainty of whether he would sign with the NBA or the rival league. The Kentucky Colonels of the ABA also drafted him, 1st overall, and they convinced him to join their league. It proved to be the right choice. In the ABA, Gilmore became a superstar. In his rookie season, he averaged 23.8 points, 17.8 rebounds, and over 2 blocks per game. He won both Rookie of the Year and Most Valuable Player, the only player in ABA history to win both awards in the same season. The Colonels became one of the ABA's dominant teams with Gilmore in the middle. His size was overwhelming for the league's smaller, less physical centers. He could score with simple power moves, using his 240-pound frame to push defenders away from the basket. On defense, he patrolled the paint, blocking shots and altering countless others. For 5 seasons, Gilmore dominated the ABA. He made 5 All-Star teams. He averaged 22.3 points and 17.1 rebounds per game over his ABA career. In 1975, he led the Colonels to the ABA championship, winning Finals MVP as Kentucky defeated the Indiana Pacers. The title validated his greatness. He wasn't just putting up numbers on a mediocre team, he was leading winners.
But the ABA was struggling financially. Attendance was inconsistent. Teams were folding. By 1976, it became clear the league couldn't survive. The NBA agreed to a merger, absorbing 4 ABA franchises: the Denver Nuggets, Indiana Pacers, New York Nets, and San Antonio Spurs. The Kentucky Colonels were not among the chosen teams. They folded. Their players entered a dispersal draft, where NBA teams could select them. Artis Gilmore, the reigning ABA champion and Finals MVP, was suddenly without a team. The dispersal draft commenced. The Chicago Bulls, who had originally drafted him 5 years earlier, selected him 1st overall. Finally, Artis Gilmore was coming to the NBA. He was 26 years old. The Bulls were terrible. In the season before Gilmore arrived, they had won 24 games and lost 58, finishing dead last in the Midwest Division. They needed everything: scoring, rebounding, defense, leadership. Gilmore provided all of it. In his first NBA season, 1976 through 77, he averaged 18.6 points, 13.0 rebounds, and 2.8 blocks per game. The Bulls improved to 44 wins, a 20-game turnaround, one of the largest single-season improvements in NBA history. Gilmore made the All-Star team. He made All-Defensive Second Team. He proved immediately that his ABA dominance translated to the NBA.
On March 18, 1977, Gilmore put together one of the best games of his career. Against the New York Knicks, he scored 42 points, grabbed 15 rebounds, and added 9 assists. 42 points from a center who was never considered a prolific scorer. 9 assists from a player known primarily for his defense and rebounding. It was a complete performance that showcased how versatile Gilmore could be when necessary. In 1978 through 79, Gilmore averaged a career-high 23.7 points per game, along with 12.7 rebounds. The Bulls won 31 games, struggling around him despite his brilliance. He made another All-Star team, but Chicago couldn't build a consistent winner, and by 1982, they decided to trade their franchise center. The San Antonio Spurs acquired Gilmore in exchange for multiple players and draft picks. San Antonio paired him with George Gervin, forming one of the most potent inside-outside combinations in basketball. Gervin, the smooth-scoring guard with the finger roll. Gilmore, the powerful center with the unstoppable post moves. The Spurs became perennial playoff contenders. During the 1980 through 81 season, Gilmore shot 67.0% from the field, the third highest single-season field goal percentage in NBA history. 67%. He attempted enough shots to qualify for the record books, and he made 2/3 of them. It was efficiency bordering on perfection. His career field goal percentage, 59.9%, stood as the NBA record when he retired. No player had ever converted a higher percentage of their shot attempts over an entire career. Gilmore wasn't just big, he was precise. He knew his spots. He knew his range. He took shots he could make and converted them at historic rates. For a player nicknamed the A-Train, Gilmore was surprisingly soft-spoken off the court. He rarely showed emotion during games. When he dunked, and his dunks were thunderous, rim-rattling displays of power, his face remained calm, almost serene. He never taunted opponents, never celebrated excessively. He simply played, possessing a quiet confidence that didn't need validation. His statistical resume across both ABA and NBA is staggering. Combined, he scored 24,941 points. He grabbed 16,330 rebounds. He averaged 18.8 points and 12.3 rebounds across 17 professional seasons. He was one of only 24 players to score over 20,000 points when combining both leagues. Yet despite all this, the championships, the MVP award, the All-Star selections, the historic efficiency, Artis Gilmore waited 23 years after his retirement for Hall of Fame induction. 23 years. Players with lesser resumes entered before him. The delay seemed inexplicable, almost insulting.
Part of the issue was the ABA stigma. Because he spent 5 prime seasons in the rival league, some voters didn't fully credit those achievements. Because his NBA career, while excellent, didn't include championships or MVP awards, some felt his resume was incomplete. The combination left him in a strange limbo, too great to ignore,
but somehow overlooked year after year. Finally, in 2011, the Hall of Fame created a special ABA committee
to consider players whose achievements deserved recognition despite playing in the defunct league. Artis Gilmore was their first inductee. At 61 years old, he finally received the honor that should have come decades earlier. In his induction speech, Gilmore spoke with characteristic grace. He thanked his family, his coaches, his teammates. He acknowledged both leagues, both phases of his career. He showed no bitterness about the long wait. He was simply grateful to finally be recognized. Today, when basketball analysts discuss the most efficient scorers in NBA history, Gilmore's name appears. When they debate the greatest rebounders, his ABA numbers demand inclusion. When they list the most underappreciated players ever, he is consistently mentioned. He was a champion in the ABA before the NBA fully respected that league. He was a dominant force in the NBA during an era when centers like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Moses Malone, and Robert Parrish received more attention. He was efficient in an era that valued volume scoring. He was soft-spoken in an era that loved personalities. Everything about his career seemed slightly out of sync with what generated headlines. But the numbers don't lie. The tape doesn't lie. And those who played against him certainly don't lie. They remember the power, the touch, the relentlessness. They remember guarding a 7'2" force who moved like a freight train and finished like an artist.
Artis Gilmore retired in 1988 after brief stints with the Spurs, Bulls, and Boston Celtics. He left quietly, much as he had played, without drama, without complaints, simply moving on when the game no longer needed him. His legacy lives in the record books, in the history of two leagues, and in the memories of those who watched the A-train roll through defenses. He proved that greatness can be efficient rather than flashy, that dominance can be quiet rather than loud, that a player can be fundamentally brilliant without needing to be fundamentally famous. In Jacksonville, a small university remembers when a 7-footer took them to the national championship game. In Kentucky, ABA historians remember when a dominant center led the Colonels to glory. In Chicago and San Antonio, older fans remember when Artis Gilmore was the most reliable, most efficient, most unstoppable big man they'd ever seen. And somewhere, the A-train rests on its tracks, its journey complete, its legend quietly secure among those who understand that the most powerful forces don't always make the most noise. They just keep moving forward, unstoppable.
Some players entered the NBA with destiny already written. Top picks, massive contracts, expectations carved in stone. Dennis Johnson's path was different. His journey was longer, harder, filled with doubt. But by the time it ended, he had become something rare, a player whose greatest compliment came not from awards or statistics, but from a simple phrase spoken by Larry Bird: "The best teammate I ever had." Dennis Johnson was born on September 18, 1954. He grew up in Compton, California. a city that would later become known for producing exceptional basketball talent, but in the 50s and 60s was simply a working-class neighborhood. Johnson attended Dominguez High School, where he played basketball without attracting much attention. He wasn't a highly ranked recruit. Major colleges didn't pursue him. After high school, he enrolled at Los Angeles Harbor College, a junior college where he could continue playing and developing his game. From there, he transferred to Pepperdine University. In his final college season, 1975 through 76, he averaged 15.7 points per game. Solid numbers, but not the kind that typically produced lottery picks. The 1976 NBA draft arrived. First round passed. Dennis Johnson's name wasn't called. Second round began. Finally, with the 29th overall pick, the Seattle Supersonics selected him. A second-round pick. First-year salary, $45,000. He entered the league with minimal fanfare and lower expectations.
His rookie season reflected that status. He averaged 9.2 points, 1.5 assists, and 3.5 rebounds per game. He backed up veteran guards Slick Watts and Fred Brown. The Supersonics finished 43-39, missing the playoffs. Immediately after the season ended, legendary coach Bill Russell resigned. Seattle seemed directionless. Johnson seemed like a marginal player, and the future was uncertain. The following season brought more instability. Bob Hopkins took over as head coach, but lasted only 22 games before being fired. Lenny Wilkins, the former Sonics player, returned to coach the team. Wilkins studied his roster and saw something in Johnson: defensive potential, athleticism, and intelligence that could be developed. He gave Johnson a starting role. Johnson responded. His scoring increased to 12.7 points per game. His assists jumped to 2.8 per game. More importantly, his defense became suffocating. At 6 feet 4 inches, with long arms and quick feet, he could guard multiple positions. Wilkins paired him with Gus Williams in the backcourt, creating one of the most dynamic defensive tandems in the league.
In 1978 through 79, everything came together. Johnson averaged 15.9 points and 3.5 assists. He made his first All-Star team. The Sonics won 52 games and entered the playoffs with championship aspirations. They navigated through the Western Conference, defeating the Los Angeles Lakers and Phoenix Suns. In the finals, they faced the Washington Bullets, the same team that had defeated Seattle in the previous year's finals. This time, the Sonics were ready. This time, they had something to prove. Game 4 of the 1979 finals went to overtime. The series was tied 2 games apiece. The Bullets had won the previous year. They had Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld, 2 Hall of Famers in their prime. They had championship experience. But Dennis Johnson, the second-round pick entering only his 3rd season, refused to let Seattle lose. He scored 32 points in that overtime game. He defended Washington's guards relentlessly. He made plays when the game hung in the balance. Seattle won, taking a 3-2 lead in the series. 2 days later, back in Seattle, the Sonics clinched their first and only NBA championship, defeating Washington 97-93. When the votes were counted for Finals MVP, Dennis Johnson received the honor. In only his 3rd NBA season, the player who had been drafted 29th overall was the most valuable player of the NBA Finals. From overlooked prospect to champion to Finals MVP, the transformation was complete. But Johnson wasn't satisfied with one championship. He continued improving. From 1979 through 1982, he made the all-defensive first team 4 consecutive times. He was recognized not just as a good defender, but as one of the absolute best in basketball. Guards dreaded playing against him. His combination of size, quickness, and intelligence made him nearly impossible to shake. In 1980, Seattle returned to the finals but lost to the Lakers. The championship window seemed to be closing. Then, unexpectedly, the Sonics traded Johnson to Phoenix Suns in 1980. The move shocked Seattle fans. They were trading a Finals MVP, a champion, a cornerstone of their defense. The Sonics received Paul Westphal in return, an older guard past his prime. In Phoenix, Johnson continued his excellence. He averaged over 18 points per game in his 3 seasons with the Suns. He made 2 more all-defensive teams. But Phoenix couldn't build a championship contender around him. The Suns made the playoffs, but never advanced past the Western Conference semifinals. Then came the trade that would define the second half of Johnson's career. On June 27, 1983, the Boston Celtics acquired Dennis Johnson from Phoenix in exchange for Rick Roby. Just Rick Roby, a backup center who would play 2 more seasons and retire. For Dennis Johnson, a champion, a Finals MVP, a 5-time All-Defensive selection. Phoenix's general manager would later call it the worst trade in franchise history. The Suns finished 12 games worse the following season without Johnson. Meanwhile, in Boston, Johnson joined a team featuring Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. The pieces were in place for something special.
Johnson's role in Boston was different. He wasn't the primary scorer. That was Bird's responsibility. He wasn't the dominant big man. That belonged to McHale and Parrish. Johnson was the defender, the floor general, the steady hand that made everyone else better. He guarded the opposition's best perimeter player every night. He ran the offense with precision. He hit big shots when necessary. In 1984, his first full season with Boston, the Celtics won the NBA championship, defeating the Lakers in 7 games. Johnson's defense on Magic Johnson in that series was exceptional. He harassed Magic for 7 games, making every pass difficult, every decision contested. The Lakers' offense, usually unstoppable, struggled to find rhythm against Boston's defense, and Dennis Johnson was the linchpin. 2 years later, in 1986, Boston won another championship. Johnson made his 5th and final All-Star team that season. At age 31, he was still one of the best two-way guards in basketball. The Celtics seemed destined for multiple championships with this core.
But perhaps Johnson's most memorable moment came on May 26, 1987, in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Detroit Pistons. The series was tied 2 games apiece. Boston led 107-106 with 5 seconds remaining. Detroit had possession. The ball was inbounded to Isaiah Thomas. Larry Bird, defending the inbound pass, anticipated perfectly. He darted into the passing lane and stole the ball. But his momentum carried him toward the sideline, toward the baseline, toward what appeared to be a turnover. As Bird lost his balance, he spotted Dennis Johnson sprinting toward the basket. Bird shoveled the ball to Johnson, who caught it in stride and laid it in as time expired.
Boston won. The crowd erupted, and Johnny Most, the Celtics' legendary radio announcer, delivered one of the most famous calls in basketball history. Now there's a steal by Bird underneath to DJ, who lays it in. That play encapsulated what Dennis Johnson meant to those Celtics teams. He was there, always there, in the right place at the right moment, ready when his teammates needed him. He didn't need the spotlight, he just needed to be ready. Larry Bird would later say that Dennis Johnson was the best teammate he ever played with. Not Kevin McHale, who scored over 20,000 career points. Not Robert Parrish, who made 9 All-Star teams. Not any of the other talented players who wore Celtic green. Dennis Johnson, the second-round pick from Pepperdine, the player who defended first and scored second, the ultimate teammate. Johnson's career statistics tell a story of consistency: 14.1 points, 5.0 assists, and 3.9 rebounds per game over 14 seasons. He made 5 All-Star teams. He made 9 consecutive All-Defensive teams, 6 first team, 3 second team. He won 3 NBA championships with 2 different franchises. He was a champion in Seattle, a champion in Boston, a Finals MVP, a player who made everyone around him better.
But numbers alone don't capture what made Johnson special. It was the intangibles. The way he communicated on defense. The way he made winning plays that didn't show up in box scores. The way he elevated teammates simply by being on the court. He was the connective tissue that held great teams together. After retiring in 1990, Johnson stayed connected to basketball. He coached in the WNBA and various minor leagues. He worked as a scout. He remained involved in the game he loved, though always in supporting roles, never seeking attention. The Celtics honored him by retiring his number 3 jersey on December 13, 1991. It hangs in the TD Garden alongside the numbers of Bird, McHale, Parrish, and other Celtic legends. His inclusion in that pantheon is testament to his impact. But Hall of Fame recognition didn't come. Year after year, Johnson was eligible but not selected. His 3 championships apparently weren't enough. His Finals MVP apparently wasn't enough. His 9 all-defensive selections apparently weren't enough. The voters looked at his scoring averages, never higher than 19.7 points per game in any single season, and seemed to dismiss everything else he provided. On February 22, 2007, Dennis Johnson collapsed at an NBDL practice in Austin, Texas. He was working as the head coach of the Austin Toros. He was 52 years old. Efforts to revive him failed.
He died of a heart attack suddenly and tragically, with so much life still ahead of him.
The basketball world mourned. Tributes poured in from former teammates and opponents. Larry Bird spoke publicly about the loss, his voice thick with emotion. The Celtics organization released statements honoring Johnson's memory. But one honor remained missing: the Hall of Fame. Finally, 3 years after his death, in 2010, Dennis Johnson was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Posthumously, his family accepted the honor on his behalf. He never got to give an induction speech. He never got to stand at the podium and reflect on his journey from second-round pick to 3-time champion to Hall of Famer. The delay seemed cruel. A player of his caliber should have been inducted while he could appreciate it. But at least the recognition finally came. At least his legacy was officially secured among the game's immortals. Today, when basketball historians discuss the greatest defensive guards in NBA history, Dennis Johnson's name appears prominently. When they debate the most underappreciated players ever, he leads those conversations. When they analyze what makes a great teammate, they point to DJ as the model. He won a championship as the best player on his team in Seattle. He won 2 more championships as a supporting star in Boston. He defended Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, and every other elite guard of his era. He made 5 All-Star teams while never being the most popular player in any of those games. He played 14 seasons without scandal, without controversy, without complaint. Dennis Johnson's story is one of persistence and humility. He was overlooked coming out of college. He was drafted in the 2nd round. He spent his rookie season on the bench. But he kept working, kept improving, kept proving that he belonged. By the time he retired, he had accomplished more than most first-round picks ever dream of. The championships speak for themselves. 3 rings across 2 franchises, Finals MVP, multiple all-defensive selections. But perhaps his greatest achievement was earning the respect of his peers. When Larry Bird, one of the greatest players who ever lived, calls you the best teammate he ever had, that says something statistics can never capture. Johnson never sought the spotlight. He deflected praise. He credited teammates. He focused on winning rather than individual accolades. In an era when basketball was becoming increasingly about individual brands and personalities, Johnson remained refreshingly selfless. He understood that basketball is a team game. He understood that defense matters as much as offense. He understood that the best players make those around them better. And he lived those principles every time he stepped on the court.
The image of Dennis Johnson sprinting toward the basket as Larry Bird fired that desperate pass, that's how he should be remembered. Always moving, always ready, always in the right place. Not for glory, not for highlights, but because that's what the team needed. Some players chase fame, some chase money, some chase individual records. Dennis Johnson chased championships, and he caught 3 of them. He chased excellence, and he achieved it for 14 seasons. He chased respect, and he earned it from everyone who truly understood the game. On quiet nights, when the conversation turns to the greatest players who never got their full due, his name surfaces. The second-round pick who became a champion. The defensive specialist who won Finals MVP. The ultimate teammate who made everyone better. Dennis Johnson, number 3, forever hanging in the rafters in Boston, forever remembered by those who know. And for a player who never needed the spotlight, who never demanded attention, who simply did his job with excellence and grace, perhaps being remembered by those who truly understand the game, is the perfect legacy. The steal, the pass, the layup, the victory. That was Dennis Johnson, always there when it mattered most.
4 stories, 4 players, 4 forgotten champions who shaped the game in ways that statistics alone cannot measure. Sidney Moncrief, who defended before defense had an award. Eaton, who blocked shots at a rate that may never be matched. Artis Gilmore, who dominated 2 leagues with quiet, relentless efficiency. Dennis Johnson, who won 3 championships while making everyone around him better. They never led the sports news. They never dominated highlight reels. They never became household names like Magic or Bird or Jordan. But they were there, in the margins of history, doing the work that great teams require. They defended when defense wasn't celebrated. They rebounded when rebounds weren't glamorous. They passed when passing meant someone else got the glory. They won when winning was what mattered most. Their jerseys hang in rafters. Their names appear in record books. Their legacies live in the memories of those who watched them play, who understood what they provided, who recognized greatness even when it didn't announce itself. And on nights like this, when the rest of the world sleeps, their stories continue, quietly, persistently, forever part of the game they loved, the game they shaped, the game that will never forget what they gave. Sleep well, the champions rest beside you.